Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this exclusive annual gala dinner hosted by the Australian Business Summit Council Incorporated at the Langham, Sydney. Let me begin by saluting the traditional Indigenous custodians of the land on which we have gathered and paying my respects to their elders past, present and future. May I also publicly acknowledge and express my deep appreciation to the numerous eminent individuals present for giving generously of their time to attend this very important event. His Excellency, Mr. Korhan Karakoc, Ambassador of Turkey, and please forgive me if I mispronounce your names, and his lovely wife, Mrs. Svetlana Karakoc. His Excellency, Mr. Zahid Hafeez Chaudhri, High Commissioner of Pakistan, and his spouse, Dr. Sabina Zahid. His Excellency, Mr. Mohammad Sufiur Rahman, High Commissioner of Bangladesh. Mr. Volodymyr Shalkivskyi, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Ukraine. His Excellency, Mr. Javier Carbajosa Sanchez, Consul General of Spain, and his spouse, Mrs. Marin Azhar Bati. His Excellency, Mr. Carl Hartleb, Consul General of Austria, who I haven't had the pleasure yet of welcoming this evening, so I'm doing that now. Thank you, sir, for coming. Her Excellency, Miss Monika, Konczyk, Consul General of Poland. His Excellency, Mr. Frank van Berningen, Consul General of the Netherlands. His Excellency, Mr. Ali Sevim, Consul General of Turkey, and his spouse, Mrs. Nadziya Sevim. His Excellency, Mr. Carlos Marin, Consul General of Chile. His Excellency, Mr. Manish Gupta, Consul General of India. His Excellency, Mr. Lakshman Hulugale, Consul General of Sri Lanka. I don't know if the gentleman is here yet. His Excellency, Mr. Kanka Masudul Alam, Consul General of Bangladesh. His Excellency, Mr. Vedi Kurnia Buana, Consul General of Indonesia. His Excellency, Mr. Mashare Ben Nahid, Consul General of Saudi Arabia. Mr. Atif Mohammad Alothri, Consul Commercial from the Consulate General of Saudi Arabia. Mr. Kutay Kesim, Foreign Trade Officer from the Consulate General of Turkey. Mr. Yavuz, and this is the one that I can never pronounce properly, I'll try. Gorkachia, I hope that's, I'm sure you'll correct me later on, okay? Miss Alma Gayoso, Consul Commercial, Special Trade Representative, Philippine Trade and Investment Centre. Ms. Sri Mortiningroem, Director of Investment Controlling and Implementation from the Indonesia Investment Coordinating Board and the Ministry of Investment of Indonesia. Mr. Joseph Rizik, AM, OAM, CEO, Managing Director of the Arab Bank Australia, to whom I wish to publicly apologise for the inadvertent omission of his recent AM conferral from the official program for the annual gala dinner, as I was unaware until 2 days ago of this distinguished recognition bestowed upon the gentleman on the 26th of January of this year. And please, Mr. Rizik is here present with his spouse, Mrs. Maureen Rizik. Mr. Martin Scarpino, CEO, Swiss Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Hassan Gençtürk, I got it right this time, Hassan, I think. President of Musiad Sydney. Mr. Mark Curry, MP, New South Wales Minister for Multiculturalism and Seniors, who will be arriving later as he is currently at another event. Mr. Steve Camper, MP, New South Wales Shadow Minister for Small Business, Multiculturalism and Property. Mr. Gurmesh Singh, MP, New South Wales Member for Coffs Harbour, Parliamentary Secretary for Regional Jobs and Investment. Mr. Michael Menya, Councillor, City of Canada Bay Council. Dr. Rateb Junaid, President of the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils. Mr. Kaysar Trad, CEO, Australian Federation of Islamic Councils. Professor Abdul Malak, AM, CEO of the AMMM Group and former Chairman of the Federation of Ethnic Communities Councils of Australia. Dr. Anthony Punn, OAM, Chairman of the Multicultural Communities Council of New South Wales. Mr. Ami Salem, OAM, President of the Australian Egyptian Forum Council. Mr. Sydney Parmenter, Founder and Director of Strong Holdings and former Executive Director of the Australia-China Chamber of Commerce, AustCham. Mr. Chesney O'Donnell, Manager, Policy and Advocacy of the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons. Mr. Rene Cabrera, Managing Director for Australia and New Zealand of the San Miguel Yamamura Australasia Group. Mrs. Sheba Nankyoya, Founder and CEO of the Multi Connections Group, and also immediate past National Chair of the Australia-India Business Council. Mr. Michael Harkins, MVO PSN KSJ, former Director of Protocol for over 40 years of the Department of the New South Wales Premier and Cabinet. Mr. Ruad El Ayoubi, Founder and Director of Alliance Project Group. Mr. Sean Condon, Managing Principal of Condon Advisory Group. Mr. Piers Morgan, CEO of the Warringah Group. Mr. Wei Li, CEO of Swan Wine Group. Ms. Wendy Mao, Chief Operating Officer of the Swan Wine Group. Ms. Laura Robbie, Managing Director of YouGov Australia. Mr. Xiaoling Li, President of the Charming Asia Association, and my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Stephen Parker, Director of One Vision OT Pty Limited. Thank you very, very much for being here this evening. And thanks to each and every one of you for being here this evening, because as far as I'm concerned, all of you are VIPs. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your entrees that will be served very shortly, if they haven't already been served, and the networking opportunities with your fellow guests. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the Australian Business Summit Council Incorporated was established on the 20th of December 2018 with its formal registration as an incorporated association. I'm just checking my time here. At New South Wales Fair Trading. Under its charter, the ABSC Inc. seeks to promote the bona fide rights of Australian businesses and strengthen Australian entrepreneurialism both in the domestic market and internationally. In pursuit of this, the ABSC Inc. leads informed debates, critiques and discussions about economic policies that address the needs and requirements for Australian businesses to expand, increase profitability and maximise expectations. As many of you know, the ABSC Inc. publishes a regular monthly newsletter, The Rotator, which is re-emerging from hibernation during the worst period of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is tailored to the general and specialised reading public alike, featuring practical, comprehensive views, opinions, suggestions and solutions to bolster the Australian economy as a mature, dynamic, transparent and well-regulated business, environment, I should say, by strengthening economic links and investment opportunities with our known regional trading partners and untapped extra-regional import and export markets. Likewise, the ABSC Inc.'s annual business affairs magazine, EKONOMOS, presents incisive, well-written reports and penetrating appraisals of the current business trends and forces that impact on economic growth, penned by authoritative expert figures in the fields of finance, trade, investment, politics and diplomacy, drawn from the Australian and international communities. EKONOMOS, moreover, comprises selected highlights of the ABSC Inc.'s signature events and meritorious recognition of its gold, silver and bronze sponsors who have given and continue to provide generously to make this publication possible. Under my leadership, but ably abetted and supported by my wonderful board of directors, the ABSC Inc. is expanding rapidly to augment its influence and pervasiveness within the business community in Australia and abroad through actively promoting business investment and innovation into high value added and technologically advanced sectors and industries, and assisting small, medium-sized and large businesses to further multilateral business relationships within the national community and extraterritorially through seminars, conferences, partnerships, expos, memoranda of understanding, trade delegations, negotiations with political and business leaders, and participation in national and international economic roundtables. Indeed, the ABSC Inc. is planning to diversify its elaborate links within the Australian and global business networks and to continue formulating comprehensive policies, measures and practical recommendations to increase business and investment possibilities for our country's economic growth performance. As the ABSC Inc. President for the 4th consecutive year and on behalf of the Board of Directors, I take great pride in commending this leading organisation for the promotion of Australian business and in furtherance of multilateral trade and investment relationships between the domestic market and the international business community. Moving on, it gives me immense pleasure at this point to cede the lectern to our first keynote speaker for this evening. His Excellency Mohammad Sufiur Rahman is the High Commissioner for the People's Republic of Bangladesh to the Commonwealth of Australia, New Zealand and Fiji. Prior to his current appointment as High Commissioner, His Excellency was the High Commissioner to Sri Lanka from 2012 to 2014 and Ambassador to Myanmar from 2014 to 2017. Over 3 decades as a diplomat, His Excellency served as the Deputy High Commissioner at the Bangladesh High Commission in Islamabad, Pakistan from 2008 to 2009 and as Director at the SARRC Secretariat from 2004 to 2007. He also served as Counsellor at the Bangladesh Permanent Mission to the United Nations in Geneva from 1999 to 2002 and First Secretary at the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi, India from 1995 to 1999. His Excellency carried out numerous domestic assignments in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in his capacity as Director General of SARC and Director General Economic Affairs from 2010 to 2012. During this time, he was assigned with the specific tasks of holding and preparing for the 2011 Colombo Process Ministerial Meeting, the 2011 SARC Summit, the 2011 United Nations LDC 4th Conference, the 2011 Autism Conference, the 2011 Climate Vulnerable Forum, the 2011 World Marketing Summit, and the 2012 UN, a whole host of UN conferences, including the Rio Plus 20 conference. Mr. Sufiur Rahman also attended a number of United Nations General Assembly sessions, conferences, meetings of the World Health Organization, the United Nations Compensation Commission, and the Conference on Disarmament in Myanmar. He was particularly associated with managing the fallout from violence throughout Rakhine in 2016-2017 and actively participated in the intricate negotiations for the return of refugees or forcibly displaced persons. High Commissioner Rahman holds an MBA from the Institute of Business Administration, Dhaka University, and a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. And he also attended courses at the NESA Center and National Defense University in Washington, D.C., the United States. Please welcome with a huge round of applause the High Commissioner of Bangladesh to the podium for his address.
President, Australian Business Summit Council, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, Ministers and Members of Parliament, New South Wales, Consul General, prominent businessmen and executives of various chambers present here this evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting this evening and pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I sincerely thank Dr. Frank Alafaci for inviting me to speak before this august gathering. Distinguished participants, as we meet, the global situation is becoming murkier due to strategic competition, and particularly at a time when the global economy was trying to recover from the COVID-related disruptions and unprecedented supply chain issues. Almost all economies, developed and developing, were reeling. All inputs from manufacturing to technology are facing uncertainty. The war in Europe has first started impacting energy, food, manufacturing and defense supplies, and also impacting financial markets. We unfortunately face a situation of stagflation in the US and also in Europe. Growth estimate for 2022 is being reduced by almost 1%, with weak consumer confidence and spending and tighter financial conditions that is going to lead to less investment. International Monetary Fund predicts 2% loss in global growth for the war in Ukraine, and if it drags on for months, and it will certainly test the limit of resilience of global financial markets and may lead to even higher energy and food prices and entrenched inflation everywhere. Some even worry that the world economy might be fragmented into geopolitical blocks with different human rights, democratic practices, technological standards, and currency and exchange system. Such changes, if it happens, would be no less than a tectonic shift, demanding significant transformation in the production networks and supply chain. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the question will then arise that which countries can meet newer demands of manufacturing and production. In 2007, Goldman Sachs, in its report, Beyond the BRICS, the next 11, had identified 11 such economies, at the top of which was South Korea, Mexico, and Turkey. And Bangladesh was at the bottom of that 11 countries. After about 15 years, if we compare all these 11 economies, based on World Bank and IMF data, we will find that Bangladesh has registered the highest GDP growth in this period of very high uncertainty among these 11 countries. Bangladesh is closely followed by Vietnam in that. Egypt, Indonesia, and the Philippines come thereafter. Logical question is whether they can continue the surge that they have been maintaining in these new circumstances that demand huge transformations. The Paris Climate Accord of 2015 requires responsible consumption and sustainable production. And at the heart of all this will be carbon neutrality. We have started seeing manifestations of existential threats to hundreds of millions of people owing to global warming, sea level rise, extreme weather events. Though late, major economies are now committing to their ambitions of carbon neutrality by 2050 to 2060. As a silver lining, Europe's war may fast forward these endeavors towards zero carbon economy in a different context. And it might facilitate emergence of new low carbon and technology-based solutions. This is bound to lead to many adjustments and alterations in the production system. Can these emerging and also weaker economics survive and thrive in this situation? As for Bangladesh, we have the least carbon footprint among the 11 countries that I referred to, with less than 0.6 tons of carbon dioxide emission per capita against the global average of 4.5 ton. India sits at 8 tons, and Australia, unfortunately, over 15 tons per capita. If we again compare energy intensity of these economies in terms of kilogram of oil consumed for production of $1,000 in the GDP per PPP terms, Bangladesh and Turkey consume around 65 kg of oil for producing this $1,000 equivalent of GDP, while the global average is 121 kg. India uses more, 124 kg, Australia at 115 kg. China, Russia, and South Africa, they are around 190 kg. That signifies their challenges, their dependence on fossil fuel. The question is whether the world is showing preference to the climatically responsible countries like Bangladesh and protect and reward them for their good behavior. Bangladesh, despite traditionally being a low carbon economy, is facing severe impacts from sea level rise, intense salinity, and extreme weather events. You will not believe, but about 6 million people are already climatically displaced in Bangladesh. We are losing about 1% of GDP from salinity. We are losing about 1.5 to 2.5% of our GDP for adapting to various climate-related challenges. And interestingly, we're also losing about 2% of our GDP for extreme climate events. Now, if we were not impacted by climate, perhaps we would be continuing with a 10% plus GDP growth per annum for decades. If that would have happened, our aspiration to becoming a developed economy would have been much more easier than that we are maintaining at 6 to 7% now. Now, it is in that context, is it asking too much from the viewpoint of climate justice, some preferential treatment? Should this preferential treatment to technology be part of the climate justice that we seek? Can Bangladesh have access to new technologies on carbon sequestration, blue and green hydrogen, and new mega storage batteries to be able to enhance participation of renewables in its energy mix? Should climatically vulnerable countries be given easy or preferential access to maintain low carbon path and even look for higher ambition on mitigation? Distinguished participants, many seek to find out why Bangladesh, a resource poor country, has been maintaining an impressive developmental journey. Besides resilience of the people and its young population, there are many other factors. These include economic policy consistency despite political difference among major political parties, government acting more like a facilitator than a regulator, significant liberalization that is happening, and generally sound macroeconomic policies. Our fiscal deficit has always been less than 5%, which is very impressive. Bangladesh has never defaulted on its loan commitment in the last 4 decades. Our debt to GDP ratio is about 32%, and it is almost fixed for the last 2 decades, and we are very close to Indonesia on that. External debt to GDP ratio stands at about 12%. This indicates resilience of the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, however, there are challenges for Bangladesh. For our having export concentration in apparel and textiles. Export policy dualism is there in favor of the garment industry at the cost of other industries. Over-dependence on remittance to offset trade deficit, and low tax to GDP ratio, less than required investment in infrastructures, etc. These are some of the constraints that prevent Bangladesh economy from transitioning into a manufacturing hub like Vietnam, focusing initially on component industries for the globe. For a smooth transition, Bangladesh will need to enter into free trade agreements with bigger economies and regional bloc markets, because Bangladesh is estimated to lose about 14% of its export if duty-free, quota-free treatment is withdrawn in the post-LDC era, and our exports are subjected to duty in the range of 8 to 15% in many export markets. It's a matter of satisfaction. In Australia, we have seen a firmer commitment from the Australian policymakers that has declared continuation of duty-free quota-free treatment for Bangladeshi export to Australia even after we graduate out of the LDC. Finally, poor participation of women in the workforce, which is only 36% against more than 80% for men. This, along with enhancing human capacity and upskilling of the labor force, can catapult Bangladesh economy from a global rank of late 30s, we're now late 30s, to first 25 within a decade. As an example, Bangladesh is already 28th trade partner of Australia with a two-way trade of about $3 billion Australian dollar. with the inclusion of LNG and other fuel, minerals and metals, and newer items in the export basket, this may easily cross 10 billion by 2030. A trade and investment framework arrangement signed last year during the COVID pandemic could be a harbinger of true partnership when Australia is seeking to reduce dependence on a few economies for supplies and diversify export and sourcing. Australia has a prospect of investing in Bangladesh, both in infrastructure, FDI, and fledgling equity and debt market. Australia can consider Bangladesh as one of its production hubs and re-import manufactured goods and processed items, from light engineering products to metallurgical, and from engineering components to value-added wool items and biotechnological products could be the range of such an economic partnership. Bangladesh imports about 8.5 to 9 million bales of cotton per annum and can easily absorb a significant amount of Australian produce, which is about 3.5 million. Leaders of Australian economy present this evening. Bangladesh economy is under a fast transition, seeking to diversify. It is in the last 4 years, contribution of ready-made garments in our export has reduced from 84% to 80%. Agricultural products, jute and jute goods, pharmaceuticals, leather products and engineering products are showing great promise. Export from ICT and IT-enabled services have crossed US $1.3 billion. Numerous startups, call center companies, e-commerce platforms, and emerging digital device manufacturing and assembling plants indicate a much higher potential for ICT outsourcing. The next frontier for Bangladesh is artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, and other fourth industrial revolution technologies. Can Australia be a partner in the transformation of Bangladesh? It is good that Australia has started focusing on South Asia, in particular India. However, it may be advisable to go beyond the territoriality of India and see Bangladesh and eastern part of India together as a growth zone. A 8-kilometer long bridge over the mighty river Ganges is going to be open from next month and will connect the two adjacent region of about 300 million people and the economy. Dhaka and Kolkata, two mega cities of over 25 million people, will then be only 250 kilometers apart, like twin cities, Canberra and Sydney. They may emerge as twin cities, creating enormous business potential for the Bay of Bengal, which is one of the priority areas of Australia. Are the doyens of Australia economy fully cognizant of such an eventuality and considering Bangladesh as a production hub, a country from which it can source many things, and a market in the Indian Ocean region? I thank you.
Thank you very, very much for your speech. Another huge round of applause, people, for His Excellency, the High Commissioner of Bangladesh. Thank you very much. The first of our VIP speakers for this evening, the Honourable Mr. Steve Camper, MP, was elected to the New South Wales Legislative Assembly as the member for Rockdale for the Australian Labor Party at the 2015 state election. Prior to entering the Parliament, Mr. Camper was a senior partner in Camper Chartered Accountants. He's currently the New South Wales Shadow Minister for Small Business, Property and Multiculturalism. Please warmly welcome the Honourable Steve Camper MP to the lectern.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I want to thank Francesco, Dr. Francesco, and the board for having me here this evening. I want to acknowledge the wonderful collection of distinguished guests, all our excellencies and people and others from the Diplomatic Corps. My political colleagues who haven't turned up yet. I'm not saying that I miss them. I've been the Minister for Multiculturalism, Mark Kuro. We've been together every single night, so I'm enjoying the break. But he will be joining us at some stage. But I also want to. I'm sorry. I need to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. What a great event! An important event, because of recent years for the business community, for trade, and in terms of impact on our economy, it has been really, really tough. And most of the conversations, and myself as shadow small business, as well as multiculturalism and property, we're just talking about the present day problems that we've been facing, and talking to business and going through all the trauma and working through transfer payments, and observing government debt and cost, and it's all been a little bit negative. It's all been a little bit negative. There's conversations, positive conversations about how we pivot and how we're going to do things in the future. And there were some real positive things that we saw come out through that COVID period. And it's very important that we brace those. What's really intriguing with tonight is the mix of people and the mix of representation. And I've often thought, how do you get a real solid, true network happening where our business communicates to the rest of the world and trades with the rest of the world? You need resources, you need people, and you need people with connection. And when we have a nation like this, or a state like this, such a beautiful multicultural state like Australia, with highly successful people within our multicultural communities. And I think in many respects, we're a little bit late in doing this and getting this happening. And that's why I take my hat off to the Australian Business Summit Council for this initiative. I know it's 4 years old, but we've had about 2 years of COVID, which has interrupted. But now's the time to put the front foot forward and really leverage off this opportunity that we have. We've got human assets, we've got human connection, which can connect us to the rest of the world and light us up as a nation, and also work and broaden our trade relations, rather than just sticking to those traditional relations that we've had, those core relations, which, they've been good, and we've been blessed with certain resources which have kept everything channeled, down a narrow path. But we have opportunity to change. We have the opportunity now as a state and as a nation to start expanding and getting back into manufacturing things here, and doing that with strategic partnerships and alliances, such as we have we've dealt with countries that we haven't dealt with before. His Excellency was 100% right when he spoke about our relations with India and how we've connected up with India. But how about we look a little bit around on the other side a little bit too, and have a look at those beautiful, wonderful communities, those nations that are prospering and powering and growing at a much greater pace than what we understand, and see how we can tap into that, how we can tap into the innovation, and not just from a trade relations perspective. There's opportunities both ways, and I think where we can all benefit. But overall, I'm really fascinated by this approach, this connection. I think it's an opportunity to create a true, solution warehouse through a platform like this. And I'm encouraged so much by what I've seen tonight, and I truly want to be a part of this, and want to and continue to have open, direct dialogue, because us as politicians, we go into Parliament thinking we know everything. I had a glorious 30-year career in a number of businesses, predominantly in the accounting profession, but I thought I knew everything. From the day I entered Parliament, I realised I knew nothing. And now it's about asking questions, making inquiries. Just as a very well-known Greek friend of mine, Socrates, said, you make inquiries, I know nothing. And we're learning, but without the likes of an organisation like this council, and all of you here, we can't learn. Please keep continuing this dialogue and engagement. It is so important for our society and our country moving forward. Thank you very much.
I'm truly touched by the Honourable Minister's words. It's really great to hear such kind words and encouragement for such a distinguished gentleman as himself. And to be perfectly frank, this is only the second or third time that I've had the pleasure and privilege of meeting Mr. Camper, and he's obliged me and my organisation this evening by basically accepting my invitation without question whatsoever to come this evening and provide us with his insight into the way forward for Australia, the way forward for Australia, both in terms of our domestic business environment and our international business dealings. So thank you very, very much.
We have a very strong metaphorical bridge expanding across 15,000 kilometers between Australia and Turkey, embodied by the 150,000 strong Australians of Turkish origin who proudly call Australia home since 1968. Strong presence of our community doesn't only contribute to cultural diversification of Australia, but also provides our countries with a genuine opportunity to further strengthen bilateral relationship in every term and in a way compensating the difficulties posed by the geographical distance between the two countries. Turkey attaches genuine importance in strengthening trade and economic relations with Australia. With this understanding, Australia is one of the core countries in Turkey's newly developed distant countries strategy, aiming at increasing Turkey's export to distant geographies. In face of the shifting landscape in the world economy, stimulated with ongoing impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, with important repercussions for the stability and reliability of supply chains, I believe that it is highly valuable and timely to actively take steps towards strengthening our trade and economic relations from a more dynamic and renewed point of view. It is especially important to keep in mind potential opportunities to arise in the aftermath of the post-COVID-19 era in diversifying and restructuring our trade relations deriving from the lessons learned. Our bilateral trade volume was recorded as 1.8 billion USD in 2021, yet we believe it is still well below the real potential of our countries. Complementary economic structure between Turkey and Australia creates a very strong basis to take advantage of huge potential of both economies for the long-term cooperation. I have the full confidence that engagements of this type have a role to play to encourage our respective business communities to speed up their efforts, in a way contributing to better exploit existing opportunities in trade and investment. For further development of bilateral economic cooperation, I believe the private sector must take the helm of the effort. In this regard, I would like to highlight just some opportunities Turkey offers. Turkey is one of the fastest growing economies in the world with an average annual GDP growth rate of 5.4% during the last 18 years, and was among the few countries that registered positive GDP growth amid the pandemic period. Having a large domestic market with a population of over 85 million, Turkey offers robust, dynamic economy and young, highly skilled and advanced labor force to foreign investors. Turkey's geographical location is also a great advantage for investors and traders. Thanks to its close proximity to regional markets, Turkey serves as an economic hub for multinational companies and allows direct access to 1.3 billion consumers. Investing in Turkey also brings advantages in terms of transportation cost, which is a core issue for all businessmen. As of today, Turkey provides fast and convenient transport to more than 150 destinations around the world within a flight time of 3 hours. Turkish Airlines, as one of the world's leading airlines and connecting 328 destinations in 128 countries, which makes it the largest in the world based on the number of countries served. And by the way, bringing the Turkish Airlines to Australian soil is a priority for our government in the coming period. Another important reason to invest in Turkey is our country provides abundant opportunities in a wide variety of sectors, namely automotive, white goods, energy, and defense industry, where it has a competitive edge. On the other hand, Turkey's mining and metal sectors has grown in parallel with the country's robust economy. Turkey and Australia can easily cooperate in the mining sector to share and promote best practices. As of today, Turkey hosts 773 international mining companies. It's the 10th country in global mineral diversity and possesses 73% of global boron reserves. Turkey also presents vast investment opportunities in tourism industry, ranking 6th among the most preferred tourist destinations in the world. Last but not least, Turkey is one of the most successful countries in the world in the field of health tourism. Before COVID era, Turkey attracted more than 600,000 medical tourists. There are much more to mention, but I wanted to provide you just some figures to better explain why I believe Turkey and Australia and businessmen of both countries should increase engagement and cooperation. Both countries have huge potential for increasing the bilateral trade and investment, and we are only beginning to discover the things we can accomplish together. I am confident that the coming years will unveil the true potential of Turkish-Australian ties. Turkish commercial missions in Sydney and Melbourne are and will always be ready to assist business people of Australia in this direction. With that, let me conclude by expressing my gratitude once again to the Australian Business Summit Council for giving me the chance to address this respectable audience. And I thank you all.
Our third VIP speaker for this evening is a prominent banker, philanthropist, and one of the most celebrated members not only of the Australian Lebanese community, but indeed of all the multicultural communities that comprise the backbone of this wonderful country of ours. Mr. Joseph Rizk, AM, OAM, is the CEO and Managing Director of the Arab Bank Australia Limited since 2010. He was previously the ABAL's Chief Banking Officer for over 5 years, overseeing the retail, commercial and trade banking operations and branch networks of the Arab Bank Australia Limited, as well as being responsible for all the revenue generating mechanisms of this institution. Before the ABAL, Mr. Rizk worked for over 30 years, predominantly in senior executive roles for the National Australia Bank, where he led and managed a series of large business units in Sydney and Greater New South Wales, and directed the NAB's New South Wales and ACT property finance groups. From 2014 to 2017, Mr. Rizk was the president of the Westmead Medical Research Foundation. Likewise, he was nominated in 2015 for the position of director of the Westmead Millennium Institute for Medical Research, and became chairman of the Italian Opera Foundation Association, as well as receiving the Order of Australia, OAM, award in recognition of his extraordinary contribution to the banking sector, community and charitable works, especially in the Lebanese and Arabic communities. Moreover, Mr. Rizk became a board member of the Australia Arab Chamber of Commerce and Industry in 2016 and the Melkite Catholic Eparchy Corporation 4 years later. As recently as 2021, he was appointed to the Powerhouse Parramatta Committee and recognised in the 2022 Australia Day Honours list with his appointment as a member of the Order of Australia AM for his distinguished professional and community service. Currently, Mr. Rizk is also a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors and a fellow of the Australian Institute of Management, as well as a board director of the Australian Lebanese Chamber of Commerce for the past 15 years. Equipped with over 47 years of corporate, commercial and international banking and finance experience, Mr. Rizk excels across the banking spectrum through his sound judgment and intuitive ability to generate positive results in the face of difficult market conditions and an increasingly competitive business environment. Please welcome Mr. Rizk to the lectern with a huge round of applause.
I knew I came here inappropriately dressed tonight. I should have worn my Elvis suit and put on my wig. First up, let me just say it's an honour to be here tonight. But Your Excellencies, the High Commissioners, Ambassadors, Consul Generals, members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. What Frank has been able to achieve with this summit in such a short period of time is something that we should really, grasp and continue to encourage. The achievement in such a short period of time to get a collection of diversity together in itself tells you that it's a success. When you think about the wealth of this country, all the assets that we have as a country, the most important asset is the human resources. It's the people that make up this country. And as a very young boy, when I came to this country, diversity was there already, but limited in numbers. But what we've been able to achieve in a matter of about 6 decades, what I can recall, and that tells you that I'm over 60, but the reality is the achievement has been fantastic. But in reality, we're just starting. If we look at every opportunity that was announced tonight by their excellencies, look at the opportunities that exist, not just in this country, but in the world around us. And you know who drives those opportunities and maximises those opportunities? It's people such as you in this room. If we remain focused about those long-term opportunities, and we remain focused about how we manage the challenges like we have in the last couple of years, we don't stress over the challenges, but we manage the opportunities. And if we take that view going forward, we'll achieve enormous success. I just want to say that if you haven't looked at the aims of what Frank has tried to achieve, right? Read about the Charter, read about what is the purpose of this summit. There's 4 main purposes. I'm not going to recite them to you because they're all pretty straightforward and basic, and they collate the wealth that's here tonight, the wealth of the diversity of this great country of Australia. And I see the faces here of people that I've known for quite a long period of time. Your contribution has been enormous, but we're not asking you to stop. We're asking you to start moving again in a positive light. We can put all the blame on COVID, we can put all the, the concerns that we've had, but we've got to move forward, right? There's a lot of things happening throughout the world, and think about the value of being in Australia. We are so blessed. I hear that time and time again. This is the lucky country. Where else in the world would you want to be? But that is the reality. So if we don't harness that strength that we've all got and able to contribute in a very positive, in a very challenging sort of way, we're going to walk away thinking we could have done more, right? But the reality is the opportunities are there, so grasp it. To Frank and his team, what a great success. And Frank will keep encouraging you, we'll support you, but we'll also be active around you to make sure that you continue with that success. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. Thank you very much.
In this marvellous 5-star venue, the Australian Business Summit Council Inc. is privileged to officially launch. I'm not going to continue until everybody quietens down. I feel like I'm talking to my students. Settle down or I'll send you to the principal. Okay. Anyway, of course I'm only joking, but please, this is a very, very important part of tonight's proceedings because I'm privileged to officially launch the 3rd issue of the Council's business affairs magazine, EKONOMOS. Now, I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. As an evident, I should say, Greek-sounding play on the English term that denotes the study of the distribution of wealth and income, EKONOMOS draws its inspiration from the proposal raised by the ABSC Inc. Secretary, Mrs. Silvia Alafaci, at a Board of Directors meeting of the Council in 2019 to supplement the organisation's regular digital monthly newsletter, The Rotator. Yes, you guessed it, it's her brainchild. As mentioned earlier, EKONOMOS's content features well-written, informative articles penned by distinguished members of the Australian and international business community and diplomatic community as well, including advertisements to recognise our generous gold, silver and bond sponsors, and selected highlights of the Australian Business Summit Council Inc.'s elite networking seminars, conferences, partnerships, expos and the like. EKONOMOS Issue 3 2022 would not have been possible without the article contributions of 13 eminent individuals to whom I express my heartfelt appreciation as the President of the Council and also as the 14th article contributor to this edition of the magazine. These 13 eminent individuals are His Excellency Mr. Shingo Yamagami, Ambassador of Japan. His Excellency Dr. Mykola Kulinic, former Ambassador of Ukraine. And we are privileged tonight to have present here the Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Shalkivskyi. Her Excellency Mrs. Helen de la Vega, Ambassador of the Philippines. His Excellency Dr. Joseph Agoe, High Commissioner of Ghana, who is an apology tonight because he's been called on urgent business abroad. Otherwise, he would have been here tonight with us all. His Excellency Mr. Mohammad Sufiur Rahman, High Commissioner of Bangladesh. Mr. Joseph Rizak AM, OAM, CEO and Managing Director of the Arab Bank Australia. Ms. Lee May Saw, Barrister, the Frederick Jordan Chambers. Mr. Gary Garner, Director of the Garner Partnership Pty Limited. Mr. Kian Garamani, Principal of RSM Australia Pty Limited. Miss Laura Robbie, the Managing Director of YouGov Australia, who unfortunately was unable to be here this evening, but is well represented by her colleague Miss Shazia Mia. Is Shazia still around? At the back of the room there. Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Sean Condon, Managing Principal of Condon Advisory Group. Thank you, Sean. Mr. Art Phillips, Founder and Director of 101 Music Pty Limited, who would have been here with us tonight, along with his wife, but for the fact that he unfortunately contracted COVID. I'd like to also say that insofar as art is concerned, he's a famed musician, songwriter, who's won, I believe, 2 or 3 Grammy Awards, and it would have been lovely to have him here this evening with us. And my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Stephen Parker, over there at the left-hand side of the room, the founder, director, and digital transformation specialist at One Vision OT. I would like to request each of these distinguished article contributors who are present here this evening, all their representatives, to come forward as your names are called and remain on the stage for the duration of a formal ceremonial presentation of trophies in acknowledgement of your contribution to EKONOMOS Issue 3 2022. And I would like to call upon, in order to do this properly, the assistance of Mr. Ruad El Ayoubi, President of the Australian Business Summit Council, Vice President of the Australian Business Summit Council, and also the founding director of Alliance Project Group. Thank you, Ruud. Thank you very much.
No problem at all.
Now, what I will do is I will get Ruud to read out the names of the awardees individually, and we'll get you to come up on stage one by one. So, Ruud, please join me.
Sure. Thank you, Frank. So we'll call up on the stage His Excellency, Mr. Mohammad Sufiur Rahman, High Commissioner of Bangladesh.
Now you will notice that Sylvia is distributing the 3rd issue of the magazine. So make sure you take a copy or a couple of copies of it home with you to read it. It's really interesting stuff.
Okay, we'll call up on the stage Mr. Volodymyr Shalkivskyi, Deputy Head of Mission, on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Mykola Klinic, former Ambassador of Ukraine. Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, members of the Australian Government and Parliament, first of all, I would like to extend appreciation to Frank, Sylvia, and entire team for the extraordinary work. It's really important to connect government, business, community, and NGOs. And I also would like, on behalf of Ukrainian government, express sincere appreciation to the Australian people, Australian government for the support that my country received. It's important for us not only discuss wartime events, but also to think about peaceful time. So we will need Australian technologies, investments when the war is over. And I'm grateful for the support. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call upon the stage Mr. Joseph Risk, AM, OAM, CEO, Managing Director, Arabank Australia. We'll call upon the stage Ms. Sajia Mia on behalf of the Managing Director, YouGov Australia.
And just on that note, Laura apologises. Laura Robbie, the managing director of YouGov Australia, apologises for not being here this evening. As you know, we're in the midst of an election campaign, and YouGov is responsible for doing all the news polls and things like that. So her organisation is very, very busy at this point in time. But we do have Shazia here to accept an award on her behalf, and thank you for being here to do that.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I'll call upon the stage Mr. Sean Condon, Managing Director or Managing Principal, Condon Advisory Group.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call upon the stage Mr. Stephen Parker, Director, Digital Transformation Specialist, One Vision OT.
Sorry, I shall be immensely brief, but there have been all of the speakers today have talked about the opportunity that technology creates to connect us all, whether it be video calls to our friends around the world, or whether truly transformative changes in our businesses. The problem is, most of us don't really talk about it. Happy to have a chat later.
All right, Mr. Art Phillip, Founding Director, 101 Music, has contracted COVID, which prevents him from attending this annual Gala dinner. but his good friend and colleague, the ABSC Inc. President, Mr. Dr. Frank Alfaci, will be honoured to receive an acknowledgement award on his behalf.
And my heartfelt thanks to both Nini and Ruad for kindly assisting me with the presentations. Would you all please extend a huge round of applause for these 13 eminent individuals in acknowledgement of their invaluable contribution to the third issue of EKONOMOS, the business affairs magazine published by the Australian Business Summit Council, Inc. On behalf of the ABSC Inc.'s Board of Directors, I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank each and every one of these article contributors and to commend EKONOMOS Issue 3 2022 to the specialised and lay reading public, which will become available to the Association's friends, supporters and the community at large from this evening onwards. Ladies and gentlemen, we've almost reached the end of this exclusive annual gala dinner hosted by the Australian Business Summit Council to officially launch the third issue of the Council's business affairs magazine EKONOMOS. Now, as with all successful events, this significant occasion would not have been at all possible without the extraordinary work of the ABSC Inc.'s Board of Directors. As the President of the ABSC Inc., I would like to thank particularly the Council Secretary, Mrs. Silvia Lafaci, for her incredible devotion to organising this annual gala dinner, selecting this magnificent five-star venue, sending out most of the invitations, preparing the table arrangements, yes, all the flowers, all the candles, everything that you see there, okay, because of Sylvia, and liaising with the Langham Sydney's management events team led by Miss Beatrice Soares, to whom we owe a special debt of gratitude and appreciation for her kindness, patience and impeccable professionalism. Now, it would be grossly remiss of me not to publicly acknowledge a couple of other people. Mrs. Setcha Dagmaji, I already mentioned Setcha or Nini before, one of the ABSC Inc.'s directors, a brilliant networker, a close friend and advisor to both Sylvia and myself, and a genuinely beautiful human being who is present with her husband Hans this evening. Would you please give them both a well-deserved thunderous applause? I'd also like to acknowledge Miss Paula Jesse, who's another member of the Board of Directors of the ABSC Inc., due to whom we were able to get in contact with the Langham and make all the necessary arrangements for us to have our event here. Paula is unable to be here with us this evening. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Bimal Yoshi. Is Bimal still around or has he left? There at the back of the room, another valued member of our Board of Directors for being here this evening. Thank you, Bimal, much appreciated. I'd also like to publicly acknowledge a dear personal friend of mine, Mr. Hassan Gençtürk. Look at the look of surprise on his face over there. He's probably wondering why. Well, I'll tell you what, he's the president of Musiad Sydney, the New South Wales branch of the Turkish Industrialists and Business People's Association. And I also want to acknowledge the Musiad representatives who are present here this evening. Thank you, Hassan, and dear friends from the Turkish community as always, for your generous support of the Australian Business Summit Council Inc. Hassan, can you come up here, please? And on that note, I'd also like to acknowledge again His Excellency the Ambassador of Turkey and his lovely wife, and the Consul General of Turkey and his lovely wife, and the gentleman over there from the Turkish, or the commercial part of the Turkish Consulate General. The relationship that I personally and the organisation has with the Turkish community is absolutely amazing. And I'm so happy to have representatives from some of the other communities, be they the Spanish, the Chilean, the Ukrainian, the Indian community, not to mention the Pakistani, the Bangladeshi, the Austrian community, okay, that we are genuinely interested in building close working relationships with. Thank you very, very much for being here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be an official photo session now and a networking session for the remainder of the evening. And I want you to partake in that, but I also want you to please consider joining the Australian Business Summit Council. Membership forms and details of the 3 categories of membership are available on our website at www.absc.online. I just want to give you the thumbs up that now that we seem to have returned to some semblance of normality, the Australian Business Summit Council is going to get into first gear, and we're going to start organising more events. Some of the events that we had to postpone because of the past 2 years, and we look forward to seeing you, or most of you, if not all of you, at those events as they come to bear. So thank you to each and every one of you for being here this evening. Don't forget to take away a copy of the latest edition of the magazines, but I believe that Sylvia is also distributing, for those who do not have them already, copies of our earlier 2 issues of the magazine. So from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of each and every member of the Board of Directors of the Australian Business Summit Council, thank you so very, very much for kindly giving generously of your time to be here this evening. Some of you have come up from as far as Melbourne. Where's Joanna? Joanna Smith, dear friend of mine, and Sylvia's up from Melbourne. Always comes up from Melbourne for our annual gala dinner. And their Excellencies from Canberra, and the rest of you, okay, who've come from us quite a long distance here in Sydney. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I think I better stop, otherwise we'll be here until tomorrow morning. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening.